Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Panic Attack Coaching channel. My name's Tom and I'm your Panic Attack coach. Today we're going to be exploring the panic attack itself. Last week we looked at fear and learned all about how the fear response works, and I really recommend, if you haven't watched that video, to watch it first, because it's going to give you some really important kind of foundation knowledge on which this video is going to build. So check that out if you haven't already. If you have, let's get going. So, panic attacks. Even the words panic attack still give me slight PTSD from my experience of panic. They're such an awful thing, and any of you who have had them recently, I sincerely sympathise with you, because they're absolutely awful. And what we want to learn in this episode is how our fear response links in to create a panic attack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through what happens when you have a panic attack. Now, some of you might already know this, some of you might find this difficult to kind of think about, but it's really important to really understand the mechanisms of a panic attack, because if you understand why it happens and how, we can have a much better understanding of what might stop it. So this is really important. So let's start. We're not in a panic attack. We're going about our normal day, and something happens, and we feel an experience of fear. Now, the thing that happens is often called a trigger. Now, triggers are not the same as a cause, and I'm going to explain that a little bit more soon. But a trigger is just something that gives us that initial feeling of fear. Now, triggers can be literally anything. It could be a situation, it could be a thought, it could be an emotion, it could be a memory, it could be a sensation in your body, it could be an argument, it literally could be anything. Sometimes we have a trigger which is kind of a common one for us, but ultimately triggers change, things evolve. It doesn't really matter what the trigger is. That might sound strange at the moment, but hopefully you'll understand soon why. But a trigger is just something that causes us to feel fear. So, as we spoke about in the last video, as soon as we feel fear, it's a sign that our fear response has been activated. And remember, this is the response that has developed over millions of years to keep us safe. It doesn't know in itself what's happening. All it knows is there's a potential threat. So once this has been triggered, it sends a message to the body: we're potentially under attack. We need to prepare ourselves to fight or run away. Now, how it sends that message is through a chemical called adrenaline, which I'm sure you know very well. So the first part of a panic attack is actually the same as what happens in a life or death situation. There's a threat, you respond with your fear response by releasing adrenaline. Now, typically, panic attacks happen when there isn't an actual threat. We're overly sensitized to potential threat. Remember last time I talked about smoke alarms and how you want them to be sensitive, but only when there's actual smoke or fire. Now, similarly, our fear response, we want it to be sensitive if there is a genuine threat, but sometimes it can be a little bit too sensitive. And for those of us who've experienced panic attacks, typically our fear response is too sensitive. So we think, feel, or experience something which scares us, which then triggers this fear response. Usually there's nothing actually dangerous there, but nevertheless our fear response is triggered. And once it's triggered, bang, adrenaline's coming. So adrenaline surges, and that sometimes gives us that experience of a wave of fear. It goes through our body, and it's going to have all the effects we talked about last time. So our heart rate's going to go up, our blood pressure's going to go up, we're going to feel our heart, we're going to feel potentially tightness in our chest, we're going to be breathing faster to get more oxygen in, We're going to feel like our breathing might potentially feel a bit laboured. We're going to feel clammy. We're going to feel sweaty. In fact, we're probably going to feel a little bit dizzy. This is because we're breathing faster. And when you breathe faster, you breathe out more carbon dioxide. That actually makes, in our brain, that makes us feel a bit dizzy. And also low carbon dioxide, although it's not dangerous, can make us feel tingly, numbness, pins and needles. So all of those unpleasant sensations that you associate with panic attacks is all because of adrenaline. So our heart's racing, we're breathing faster, pins and needles, clamminess, feeling a bit dizzy, we're feeling sick because our blood's being diverted from our stomach to our muscles. We're feeling like hyper alert because our adrenaline is making us think more clearly. And all of those effects of adrenaline are like taking us by storm. It's kind of like an adrenaline storm. So if we weren't having panic attacks, this would be a sudden surge of adrenaline and we'd be like, whew, that's not nice, but fine. And actually we might not even think it's not nice. Adrenaline junkies literally do things to induce these feelings. They get a high from that surge of adrenaline. So in some ways, those of us with panic attacks, we're kind of like the anti-adrenaline junkie, where adrenaline junkies absolutely love that feeling. We are terrified by that feeling. So the feeling of fear is neither good or bad. It's all about perception. If we perceive it as an exciting, thrilling thing, like adrenaline junkies, the fear response holds absolutely no problem, holds no fear whatsoever. In fact, we invite it. We do more and more daring things just to experience it. However, most of us, most of you watching this video, do not feel like that. And this is how a fear response can turn into a panic attack. So as we're experiencing these feelings in our body, we have thoughts. We think, ooh, what is going on? Like, my heart's beating fast, I'm feeling a bit clammy, I feel a bit sick, I feel a bit dizzy, like something doesn't feel right, like there's no like danger here. There's nothing to focus our minds on. We're just thinking, gosh, like I'm just sat here, I feel like this, or I'm just walking and suddenly I feel like this. And it feels unpleasant. And in our brains we think, if that feels bad, that must be wrong, like something's not right, like is my heart okay, like, and as we feel that something's not quite right, it makes us anxious and we feel afraid, and that fear, guess what that activates? The fear response. So a fear response has made us feel some things which then have scared us, and then we've triggered the fear response again. And by re-triggering it, guess what is released? More adrenaline. Adrenaline goes round, heart's beating faster, we're even more aware of everything. Not only is the more adrenaline, is now we're hyper alert and we're focusing on these feelings, these sensations in our body. And suddenly we're thinking, gosh, it's getting worse. Like something must really be bad. Like this is definitely not normal. Guess what? It makes you feel even more afraid. More adrenaline comes. You're feeling worse. And this spirals. And thoughts quickly turn to, I'm having a heart attack, or like, I can't breathe, I'm going to pass out, I'm going to collapse, I'm going to die. Now, that catastrophic idea, that thought, is enough to send anyone into panic. And at that point, your adrenaline absolutely surges and you feel horrible, absolutely terrified. You feel like you're going to die, you're going to pass out. And it feels like that for quite a while. It feels a lot longer than it actually is. And eventually, the adrenaline in your body starts to fall because you can't sustain that high level of adrenaline for too long because you only have so much adrenaline. And as that adrenaline falls, your body doesn't react as strongly to the adrenaline because there's not as much. So you start thinking, oh, I think these feelings are getting a bit less, which then makes you think, I think I'm going to be okay, like I'm getting better. And then you feel a bit calmer, which means that the adrenaline is still dropping. And then you get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm going to be okay. And the panic attack typically lasts between 5 and 20 minutes. can be longer and it can feel like forever. And during that time, your mind and your body have both gone through absolute hell. Like, it's absolutely exhausting. After a panic attack, I mean, I know what it's like. You feel like your body's broken. You feel like you've been at the gym for about 5 hours. You feel like your brain's just absolutely like gone. You are absolutely mentally exhausted, and it's traumatizing because for your body, you literally feel like you've come close to death. And just one attack like this can be so devastating for you mentally that it creates so much fear about something like this happening again. Because remember, you're thinking like something's wrong, so you're afraid that it will happen again, and that will be the time when you die, collapse, get seriously ill. So just one panic attack can sow the seed for all future panic attacks. They're so devastating. So what I've just described here is the panic attack cycle. So just to recap, we've got a trigger. The trigger could be a thought, feeling, situation, whatever. It triggers a feeling of fear. In itself, no problem. However, that feeling of fear is produced by the fear response and adrenaline. Adrenaline courses through our bodies and produces effects, sensations that we experience that scare us. That fear of our experience, of our sensations, leads to increasing amounts of adrenaline, increasing feelings, increasing fear, and we spiral into a panic attack. And it's that belief that we have that something bad is going to happen to us that psychologists call catastrophic thinking. That catastrophic thinking is the thing that fuels the panic attack. So, do you remember last time when I said fear itself isn't really the problem, but it is heavily involved? What I mean is the fear response itself doesn't cause a panic attack. A trigger doesn't cause a panic attack. A trigger causes the fear response. The fear response doesn't cause you to panic. A fear response causes your body to respond in a very predictable way. Now, that in itself doesn't lead to a panic attack, as adrenaline junkies can tell you. Or when someone's made you jump, you have a slight heart in the mouth moment and you're fine. So you can have the fear response without panicking. So the cause of panic is not a trigger and it's not your fear response. The cause of panic is your mind. It's the belief that something bad, dangerous, catastrophic is going to happen. So in some ways we cause our own panic attacks, and that can be very frustrating and very annoying because, like all of you, I was thinking it's literally the last thing I want. How can I possibly be causing it when I'm trying my best not to have one? But it's our belief that something terrible is going to happen that ultimately causes us to spiral into this panic. And because it's a spiral, the more we panic, the worse it feels. And it really like crescendos into this attack. And that's why a panic attack is defined as this sudden surge of fear. And it comes quickly in seconds to minutes. And it can sometimes go as soon as it comes. But one thing's for certain, it will always go. So hopefully this has given you some insights into what a panic attack is and why it happens. And really what the key thing here is to understand is a panic attack is a misinterpretation of something that's very normal. And what I'm going to be talking about during this series of videos are panic attack truths. And these are truths about panic attacks, unsurprisingly. These are truths which, once you believe, and I mean really believe, once you believe these truths, you will stop having panic attacks. And the first stage is to accept them academically, like intellectually accept them, that they're true. And one of the first truths is that the sensations during a panic attack are normal. Now, that is a really hard one to believe, but that is the truth. But whether you think it, if you do think it, great, and if you believe me, fantastic. But if you really believe it, that's the difference. There's a difference between knowing and believing. Like, you can learn about gravity and you believe it's true because you see it everywhere you go. I can tell you that the sensations you experience during panic attacks are completely normal, and you can kind of agree with me and completely intellectualize the fact that it is. But until you believe it in your being that that is the case, then panic attacks are likely to persist. So what we're going to be doing is teaching you to believe. And as soon as you believe that truth and some other truths, you will overcome panic attacks. So hopefully you found this video valuable. Use this video alongside the first video on fear, and this will hopefully give you a good basis of what fear is, what our fear response is, and how these come together with our thoughts to create a panic attack, and how the panic cycle is perpetuated by our catastrophic thoughts about sensations that are ultimately normal. So that's what a panic attack is. And in our next video, we're going to look a little bit more closely at why panic attacks keep going. Why are they so frequent? Like, once we've had our first, why do they become such a problem so quickly? And why can they persist for such a long time? So thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, please like it, share it to anyone who you think that it would help. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below the video. Really appreciated, and I will talk to you next time. Thank you very much.